July 7th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. Sometimes in life, things just go in a straight line, don't they? They all just angle up, even out. Well, tonight, the sky's got something like that for us to look at. Tonight, we can see the moon, Saturn, and Antares in a line. EarthSky.org brings us this. Tonight, look up for a lineup of bright celestial objects. The moon, planet Saturn, and bright star Antares come out first thing after sunset and stay out until the wee hours after midnight. They can be seen from around the world, although the line is more symmetrical, with Saturn more equidistant from July 7th, moon and Antares in the Western Hemisphere of Earth. And you can look for that in the south to southeast sky at nightfall, if you're in those northern to mid-northern latitudes. From the Southern Hemisphere, look for them high overhead around 9 to 10 p.m. your local time. And that's the time on your clock, no matter where you are on planet Earth. Golden Saturn is the sixth planet outward from the sun, the farthest world you can easily see without anything but your eye. Although you can't see Saturn's rings without an optical aid, even a modest backyard telescope will do the trick. In 2017, the north side of the rings of Saturn are maximally tilted toward Earth. That's going to offer the best view of Saturn's rings in years. The first magnitude star, Antares, it's often called the heart of the Scorpion in that constellation Scorpius. It's a tough star to miss because Antares is very bright, distinctly red in color. And also, if you're looking from the northern hemisphere, this star appears low in the sky. Thus, people in this part of the world often notice that Antares twinkles a lot. The moon passes relatively close to Saturn and Antares every month. Some years, the moon can actually occult or cover over the star or the planet Saturn, but not this year. Every month, in fact, for the rest of 2017, the moon will swing to the north of Antares and Saturn. The last lunar occultation of Saturn happened October 25th, 2014, and there won't be another one till December 9th, 2018. We'll keep you posted. The last lunar occultation of Antares happened February 7th, 2010, and there won't be another one of those until August 25th, 2023. The moon is a chunk of rock, shining with sunlight that reflects from its surface. It can appear to cover Saturn or Antares only because the moon is so close to us relative to Saturn and Antares. But if you could see Saturn or Antares up close, you'd find that Saturn is a large planet, and Antares is one of the galaxy's largest stars. Saturn has the volume of 764 Earths. Antares has the volume of hundreds of millions of suns. Antares lies some 600 light-years away, in contrast to only 8 light minutes for the sun. So like the moon, our sun appears larger to us than this gigantic star. So here's the bottom line. No matter where you are on planet Earth, look outside on the night of July 7th, 2017, for a golden planet and a reddish star to line up with the moon. How cool is that? We'll go from the cool to the, not so very cool here. Here's a headline from Engadget. Mars is even more toxic to life than we thought. This gets a byline for Swapna Krisha for the publication Engadget. We haven't found life on Mars yet, but the discovery of organic molecules in the soil and atmosphere have left many hoping it's just a matter of time before we do. However, recent experiments may have thrown some cold water on these dreams. Scientists have studied compounds within Martian soil. They've discovered that they're toxic when combined with Mars' ultraviolet rays. We've suspected Mars was home to perchlorates. Let's spell that Perchlorates, perchlorates, since the Viking lander missions 4 decades ago. And that discovery has been confirmed by more recent rover finds. However, scientists were divided on what it could mean. Some have argued that the presence of perchlorates on Mars might actually increase the likelihood of finding life on the red planet. Not only do perchlorates lower the freezing point of liquid water, but these compounds could be used as energy source for bacterial life. After all, one type of perchlorate, ammonium perchlorate, is currently used as solid rocket fuel. According to their published findings in the journal Scientific Reports, scientists took common Earth bacteria, mixed them with Martian perchlorates, and then exposed them to ultraviolet rays similar to those on Mars. The results were pretty definitive. Bacteria were wiped out twice as quickly when perchlorates were present. Upon adding in other components found in the Martian soil, iron oxide, hydrogen peroxide, the results were even worse. Bacteria were killed 11 times faster than with just perchlorates. This paper states, quote, "These data show that the combined efforts of at least 3 components of the Martian surface, activated by surface photochemistry, render the present-day surface more uninhabitable than previously thought," end quotes. There is one upside to this discovery, though. While it's unlikely at this point that we'll find life on the surface of Mars, underground is still a possibility. The results of this study alleviate concerns about Earth-based bacteria contaminating the surface of Mars. While we should continue to take care when sending anything into outer space, any microscopic Earth-based life that hitches a ride to Mars will likely be killed by Mars' toxic conditions. Toxic, interesting, but then again, what crosses this broadcaster's mind is life as we know it. That old sci-fi movie trope, but who knows? Let's pop on over to Florida, shall we, to SpaceX and FloridaToday.com. Their story, on third try, SpaceX launches Intelsat mission from Kennedy Space Center. Well, finally, 5 countdowns, 3 launches, 2 landings, 12 satellites placed in orbit, and 1 capsule returned from it. That's SpaceX's tally from a whirlwind 12-day stretch that culminated with Wednesday's 7:38 p.m. blastoff from Kennedy Space Center by that Falcon 9 rocket carrying yet another commercial satellite. Lifting off on the mission's 3rd attempt after last-second scrubs both Sunday and Monday, the 23-story rocket thundered from Pad 39A with 1.7 million pounds of thrust. 32 minutes later, the Falcon's upper stage released the Intelsat 35E satellite, one of the heaviest SpaceX has launched yet, nearly 15,000 pounds. It started its trip to an orbit 22,300 miles over the equator. Quote, "Third try today was the charm," end quotes. That's from John Innsbrucker. He's SpaceX Principal Integration Engineer. He said that on a webcast from company headquarters. They're located in Hawthorne, California. He said, quote, "We had spacecraft separation on time, right where we wanted it to be," end quotes. Because of the heavy payload owned by Luxembourg-headquartered Intelsat, one of the world's largest satellite operators, they've got a fleet of 50, the rocket's first stage did not have enough spare fuel to even attempt a landing. The launch was SpaceX's 10th this year, the first time the company has hit double digits. It came after SpaceX had launched missions within 48 hours of each other, a Bulgarian satellite from Kennedy Space Center June 23rd, and 10 Iridium Next satellites from California June 25th. SpaceX landed the boosters from both those missions on ships at sea, recovering them for potential future launches. SpaceX engineers spent the 4th of July holiday studying rocket and ground systems for the culprit, traced in Monday's case to a mismatch between data in the rocket's avionics and a ground database. Said Elon Musk via Twitter, quote, "SpaceX team reviewed all systems again late last night. Done our best to ensure all is good," end quotes. And all was good for the Intelsat 35E mission. Intelsat's 4th Epic satellite will deliver television programming to homes, internet connections to aircraft and ships, and expand coverage for cellular networks across an area spanning from Africa and Europe to the Caribbean. Quote, "Thanks, Intelsat," end quotes, said Musk. Quote, "Really proud of the rocket and SpaceX team today," end quotes. All told, by Wednesday, SpaceX, over roughly 12 days, had performed 5 Falcon 9 countdowns on 2 coasts, resulting in 3 launches and 2 booster landings, and delivering 12 satellites to orbit for the United States and international customers. That sounds like an old-fashioned story math problem, doesn't it? As a bonus, SpaceX on Monday morning welcomed home a Dragon cargo capsule from the International Space Station with a Pacific Ocean splashdown under parachutes. The unmanned Dragon was the first SpaceX has reused. Most of the capsule flew to the International Space Station back in 2014. After Wednesday's launch, SpaceX President and Chief Operating Officer Gwynne Shotwell also credited launch teams for the company's flurry of missions over the past 2 weeks. Quote, "Our priority is to reliably launch our customers. We're pleased with the progress we're making this year to launch and recover our rockets, which is key towards achieving full and rapid rocket reusability," end quotes. SpaceX now is expected to take a break for about a month before another Dragon launches from Kennedy Space Center as soon as August 10th. And before then, United Launch Alliance will return to the Eastern Range after more than a 3-month layoff. An Atlas V rocket is targeting an August 3rd liftoff from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. It will be carrying a NASA tracking and data relay satellite called the TDRS-M. And the Air Force's 45th Space Wing can now start a 2-week maintenance period. It delayed that a day to give SpaceX another launch opportunity. The range will be prepared to host as many as 5 launches in August by the Falcon, Atlas, and Minotaur rockets. So stay tuned to Inception Radio Network and UFO Headline News. So we checked into the NASA official website, that's science.nasa.gov. Well, that's one part, and we found this fascinating article, "Solar Minimum is Coming Soon to a Neighborhood Near You." Well, let's see. High up in the clear blue noontime sky, the sun appears to be much the same, day in, day out, year after year. But astronomers have long known that this is not true. The sun does change. Properly filtered telescopes reveal a fiery disk, often speckled with dark sunspots. Sunspots are strongly magnetized. They crackle with solar flares, magnetic explosions that illuminate Earth with flashes of X-rays and extreme ultraviolet radiation. The sun is a seething mass of activity. Until it's not. Every 11 years or so, sunspots fade away, bringing a period of relative calm. Says Dean Pesnell of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, quote, "This is called a solar minimum, and it's a regular part of the sunspot cycle," end quotes. The sun is heading toward that solar minimum right now. Sunspot counts were relatively high in 2014, and now they've begun to slide toward a low point. That's expected in 2019 to 2020. While intense activity such as sunspots and solar flares subside during solar minimum, that doesn't mean the sun becomes dull. Solar activity simply changes form. For instance, says Pesnell, quote, "During solar minimum, we can see the development of long-lived coronal holes," end quotes. A coronal hole, that's a vast region in the sun's atmosphere where the sun's magnetic field opens up and allows streams of solar particles to escape the sun as the fast solar wind. Pesnell says, quote, "We see these holes throughout the solar cycle, but during solar minimum, they can last a long time, 6 months or more," end quotes. Streams of solar wind flowing from coronal holes can cause space weather effects near Earth as they hit Earth's magnetic field. These effects can include temporary disturbances of the Earth's magnetosphere called geomagnetic storms, auroras, and disruptions to communications and navigation systems. During solar minimum, the effects of Earth's upper atmosphere on satellites in low Earth orbit changes as well. Normally, Earth's upper atmosphere is heated, puffed up by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Satellites in low Earth orbit experience friction as they skim through the outskirts of our atmosphere. This friction creates drag, causing satellites to lose speed over time and eventually to fall back to Earth. Drag is a good thing for space junk, natural and man-made particles floating in orbit around Earth. Drag helps keep low Earth orbit clear of debris. But during solar minimum, this natural heating mechanism subsides. Earth's upper atmosphere cools and to some degree can collapse. without a normal amount of that drag. Space junk tends to hang.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Around. There are unique space weather effects that get stronger during solar minimum. For example, the number of galactic cosmic rays that reach Earth's upper atmosphere increases during any solar minimum. Galactic cosmic rays are simply high-energy particles accelerated toward the solar system by distant supernova explosions and other violent events in the galaxy. And here's more from Dean Pesnell of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Quote, during solar minimum, the sun's magnetic field weakens and provides less shielding from these cosmic rays. This can pose an increased threat to astronauts traveling through space, end quotes. Solar minimum brings about many changes to our sun, but less solar activity doesn't make the sun and our space environment any less interesting. Au contraire, we add. Let's pick up some sightings now, shall we? From UFOstalker.com. Here comes one from Tavares, Florida. It's got a move-on number for purposes of official tracking and identification. Here's that number, 84847. The date of this event, the 4th of July. It was reported the next day. Here's what the witness says in summary. 2 glowing orbs vanished into thin air. 1 white orb flashed. Checking out the sighting specifics, we see a viewing distance reported as 501 feet, eventually becoming 1 mile. The altitude of this object was 500 feet or less. Sighting duration, 30 minutes. But the object features are vexingly described as none. The flight path, straight line path, and then a path with directional change. This object was shaped like a sphere. It was hot that night in Tavares, Florida. The maximum temperature was 96 degrees Fahrenheit, 36 degrees Celsius, with a minimum temperature of 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 24 degrees Celsius. The maximum visibility, 10 miles, 16 kilometers, down to a minimum listed here as 2 miles, 2 kilometers. The weather conditions report thundering. Here's what happened. My boyfriend and I were coming home from Tavares, the fireworks. We had the top off the Jeep, and as we pulled into our driveway, I saw a strange glowing light. I asked him, "Do you see that light?" He said, "What light?" I pointed, and I said, "That one, over those power lines." And then he saw it, and he said, "I don't know." We didn't even park the Jeep, yet he stopped immediately, left the Jeep running, and we got out to see this. It slowly went over us in a sphere, an orange glow, too big to be a star in the sky, and we watched it go past us overhead. It went from northeast to southwest, and then it just disappeared. My boyfriend ran inside to grab a flashlight, and he flashed it in the sky all over. What we saw was a white glow moments later in the sky. It was as high as a jet, moving slow, moving from north to south. He flashed his LED spotlight at it. Then we got flashed. 2 quick bursts of light back. I freaked out. I was trying to lie down inside. He stayed outside with his flashlight. And then a few minutes later, I hear him pounding on the front living room window, yelling for me to hurry outside. So I got up and ran back outside to him. He was pointing, "Look up." I saw another orange glowing orb moving east to west and curving toward and over the lake. My boyfriend said it flashed those 2 quick beams of light one more time. I didn't witness the subsequent flashes this time. I was so scared I went back inside the house, and this time I stayed. My boyfriend came back in after 10 minutes. Very cool. At first, boyfriend did not see it, and then he got out of the Jeep, still running, and definitely saw it, and saw more than that initial thing. Fascinating. Not fireworks, we think it's safe to say. Back and forth communication via light? Who knows? Let's go to Arizona, City of Needles, for this sighting. MUFON case number 84842. It's another 4th of July sighting. This happens annually. Some of the stuff, though, just does not fit into the criteria of fireworks as we know them. This event got a next day report. The summary says, like glitter, meteor shower of objects. Well, that does sound like fireworks. We'll read it and see what you, gentle listeners, think for yourselves. Sighting specifics offer an unknown viewing distance. The altitude, over 500 feet, no cloud cover. This sighting duration was 8 minutes. Object features, other. Object flight path, straight line path, path with directional change, a path and then hovering. And this object is reported to have been star-like in shape. There isn't any meteorology report, so let's just jump in. It seemed to go something like this. Traveling back home from a fireworks show about 10 p.m., my mother and I were driving south towards home. All of a sudden, I glanced at some fireworks in the distance to the southeast, and I noticed something that reminded me of a meteor shower. It was going in a straight path towards the eastward direction. I was driving, I was turning west, but I stopped. I turned back east to really get a good look at what I was seeing. Curiosity got the best of me. I told my mother and asked her if she saw what I was seeing. She told me, yes, I see stars shining in a cluster. These objects seemed to stop going in a straight line in the sky. It seemed like they were hovering in a cluster. I pulled off to the side of the road to call my sister. I wanted to know if she could see it from her view, which was a couple of miles away from where I was. She didn't see anything but fireworks, so I told her to call someone else I knew who was living nearby. As I kept watching these glittery objects hovering, now they seemed to be there a long time. The cluster star-like glittery objects began then to drift, still in a cluster, towards the northeast. I couldn't get anything to show up on my camera phone. I watched as these things slowly moved into the distance, and then my sister texted me the person she called had seen them overhead as well, but also wasn't able to take any kind of a good picture. There were many objects in the sky. I could not figure out what they were. I've seen many things in the sky, but these things left me truly amazed. So, it doesn't seem that it fits the way we tend to think fireworks behave. And there are those then who postulate that extraterrestrial presence on the 4th of July, they're just here for the fireworks, folks. Let's shift our trajectory north just a bit, slightly to the west, and we won't stop till we come to Boise, Idaho. That's the setting for MUFON sighting number 84844. This is another 4th of July sighting reported the next day. In summary, glowing orange orb with flame-like bright orange emanations. Overhead, fading, still visible. Viewing distance here, 101 feet to 500 feet. The altitude, over 500 feet. Nope, no cloud cover. The sighting duration, 3 minutes. Object features, none. This object flew in a straight line path, and it was shaped like a sphere. Once again, no mention of the weather, so we'll weather it whatever. Here's the account. Watching fireworks over northwest Boise. Large orange orb. It was emanating a brighter orange light, and I spotted it. At least 4 other people saw this as well. At first we thought this could be a Chinese lantern, but we realized this thing was moving about 100 miles per hour, or the speed of a small plane. When it was almost directly overhead, the light faded, but the round object was still visible against the sky and moving at the same speed. I lost it against that nearly full moon, but others tracked it for another 30 seconds. Finally, we all lost sight of it. Whatever this was, it was visible for 1 minute, glowing, and then again not illuminated for another approximately 1 minute. There does seem to be a curious connector to those sightings, separate locations, on the date of July 4th. The orange, the glowing, the orb, and the movement. To this broadcaster, that stuff doesn't track like we know fireworks to track. And then we have to factor in drones, Chinese lanterns, flares, the usual suspects. But we'll never move along because we think there is something to see here, folks. Just saying. What we're seeing is we've come to the end of our daily allotment of time here. Make sure and join us tomorrow as we go off the beaten path for the UFO Headline News Weekend Edition. For now, we've got to fly. Bye-bye, because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at ufoheadlinenews.com. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.